While we were on vacation, I was playing around with adding beads to buttons, and I thought these would be really cute to add to a scrapbook or a journal or something like that. You can use any size bead, you can use any size button. You just have to try to figure out how many beads will fit around the button. And I like to make sure that I'm going through with my thread in each hole the same number of times. I think it looks nicer. For instance, on this one I went through each hole 3 times with my yarn. I was using 6-strand embroidery floss with that one. Today I'm going to be using a number 8 pearl cotton. So one of these I made and I had no idea what I was going to do with it. I thought it was pretty, and when I got home I found one of these blank purse hangers that you put on the side of a table. I use these a lot. I have some that are already embellished, but years ago I bought some blank ones thinking I was going to use it for polymer clay, and so I had this one sitting out and I just stuck it on there, and I'm like, that's where I'm going to put it. It fits perfectly. So there's a lot of things you can do with them, but I mostly just wanted them for my journals. You can put a bead in the middle, you can add a tiny button in the middle, or you can just sew a little X in the middle, whatever you want to do to embellish the top of it, or you can just leave it plain. So just whatever you want to do is fine. So today I'm just going to use these irregular number 6 seed beads and a little tiny button to go on top. I think this one will be easy to see with these colors. So this is a 3/4 inch button, just a plain button. The button usually doesn't show all that much, so any button is fine. You can even use a 2-hole button, and let's see if I have one that's like that. No, I don't have it handy, but you would end up, you know, dividing the threads between the 2 holes. So I think that I can get 16 of these beads. So I'm going to go through each hole 4 times. Alright, I've got a big eye beading needle threaded with my number 8 pearl cotton. You just need to make sure your thread and your needle will fit through whatever beads you choose to use. These are just some 6/0 seed beads that are really irregular, so I'm just going to try to find some that are the same size. So I don't have a knot in my thread. I'm coming up through the back of the button in one of the holes, and I'm just going to hold on to that tail, and then I'm going to pick up a bead, and then I'm going to go back through that same hole with my yarn in the back, and my needle's coming up through this big loop here. You can do it in 2 steps if you want to, and I'll show you that on the next one. So right now my thread's coming out to the left, but I want to add my beads to the right. That's just my preference, so I'm going to pull my thread to the right of that bead. So if you want to do this in 2 steps, you pull your thread to the front, grab a bead, go through that same hole, because I want to go through, I think I said 4 times. I'm going to go through that same hole, put the bead on top. It takes a little bit longer to do it that way, and then come up through the back underneath the bead. Alright, so I've gone through that same hole 3 times, and I'm going to grab another bead, pull my yarn to the back, and go through that same hole and up through that loop of thread. Tighten that up. Okay, so now I'm ready to move on to the next hole, and I'm just going to keep repeating this until I get all around the button, and hopefully I'll end up with 16 beads. So when you're spanning the gap from one hole to the next, each of these beads are going to kind of be in a little gap, the ones that go from one side to the next or from one hole to the next. So I'm going to pick up a bead, go through that same hole 4 times. Alright, I've gone through twice, so I'm going to continue around till I get close to the end, and I'll meet you back. Alright, I have gone through that last hole 3 times. I need to pick up another bead, go through that same hole. And what we have here is, if you can see these gaps, I got one that crosses over from one hole to the next. There's a gap there, gap there, gap there. So I've got a gap here I need to fill. So I don't even know how many beads I've used. I could do the math. Alright, so I don't want to put my needle back through either one of those holes because I have the number of threads that I want in there. So I'm just going to pull my yarn to the front and pass my needle underneath this first bead toward the back. And that filled that gap. So let's count the beads. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. So that's exactly what I wanted. So I want to make sure that that looks good on the front, turn it over, and then I'm going to tie a knot with this tail that I left behind. Then I want to add a little button to the front or another bead or something like that. So just kind of straighten up your beads. They kind of want to get wonky when you start pulling on that thread. Especially these beads because they are so irregular. I complain about that a lot, but I bought a whole bunch of them a long time ago and I use them up for practice or whatever. They are cute once you get them all on there. So I don't want to cut this long thread. And see, that looks good just like that, I think. But to add a little button to it, I'm going to bring my needle back to the front through one of those holes or the one that it was right next to, and then I want to put that button on there, and then I'm going to cross through another hole before I pull it down, and that way I can position. I want to do a little X in the middle, so I'm going to go across to the next hole there and pull that up tight. Well, I didn't do that right. It's not looking the way I want it to. I should have gone through the hole that's across from it, not beside it, because I want to do an X. Same thing here, I'm going to go across. So once you get the button pulled down, the other holes should line up pretty well. And I'll just finish sewing my little X. If I can get the button to stay in place. There, that should do it. And then I'll tie a knot on the back, and I am finished with that little beaded button. So